Hey everybody, welcome to BurrTech. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about Duolingo's successful IPO. Alright, welcome back. First, with this video, I want to make sure that you like and subscribe. The more likes and subscribes we get, the more content we can make. And the number one reason why you subscribe to this amazing channel is because you get the money-making trends before they go mainstream. So, Duolingo had an IPO, and Duolingo is one of the e-learning companies I actually respect. And as you know, I run an e-learning company as well. So what makes Duolingo so good? Well, first of all, the interface and the way that Duolingo works is actually quite effective, and it is a good app. Now, I remember trying to learn Esperanto a couple years ago just for fun, and Esperanto is kind of an interesting language. If you don't know what Esperanto is, it's a man-made language that is basically made so that it is easy to understand. If you look at some of the natural languages, there's a lot of things that just don't make sense. So someone said, well, why don't we just make a language from scratch that makes sense? And that's what Esperanto was, and I think it would be good too. Now, if I wanted to relearn French, I'd probably just go straight to Duolingo. In fact, if I want to learn any kind of language, I would probably just go to Duolingo. Duolingo is a very good app. If you don't know, Duolingo was made by the same guy that made CAPTCHA, and it started off as kind of an experiment. And this experiment has grown to a very successful IPO. In fact, it did so well yesterday compared to something like Coinbase or Pluralsight, which I'll get into later. But at the same time though, since Pluralsight has done such a good job on the stock market, today it's down a little bit, but that might just be some profit taking. Again, I think Duolingo and EdTech are the future, and I've been saying this for 10 years, even before all this stuff was pretty cool. It was fairly apparent 10, 12 years ago that if you wanted to learn something, you can just do it online. Now, of course, you can just hop onto YouTube and watch a few videos, but there's a lot more that meets the eye. In fact, I've been in business for about 10 years, and I've made millions of dollars with my e-learning company, so it makes sense that a company with a lot more resources would be able to IPO successfully. So I've pretty much seen it all in the e-learning industry. 10 years ago, nobody wanted to go into the e-learning industry, and even as little as 5, 4, or maybe even 3 years ago, a lot of people just thought the e-learning industry was some kind of just random industry that, kind of made money, and it wasn't really worth paying attention to. But then COVID happened, and basically everyone started to look at e-learning as something serious. Now, I will always say that e-learning is going to be an accelerant and never a substitute. You do have to go and talk to other people, especially if you're going to learn a language, and especially if you even want to learn to code, which is what my e-learning company shows you how to do. You can't just kind of sit in front of a computer, do some tutorials, make some projects, and then expect to get a job. There's a lot more to the process. Now, a lot of these e-learning solutions are kind of saying that this is the only thing you need to do. And yes, you might be able to do this online completely in the future. However, going to a place or just interacting with people is an important part of learning, and so you should never forget that. So let's take a look at why Duolingo was such a successful IPO and what some of the challenges are in the future. Now again, I have to stress that I own an e-learning company as well, and it seems a little weird for me to talk about another e-learning company, but if you think about it, it's like if a basketball star looked at another basketball star, and that basketball star maybe won a few trophies and whatnot. Well, that's kind of what this is. I like to give credit where credit is due, but Duolingo is one of the ones that I actually do like, and if I were to, again, like I said, relearn French or any other language, I would probably go there right away. So Duolingo has actually made quite a bit of revenue. It made $70 million in 2019 to 2020, and then last year it made $161 million. That's a lot of money. However, it is still not profitable. It lost about $15 million on that. And this is a trend with a lot of e-learning companies. They make a lot of money, but they end up losing it. Now, there's a lot of companies that do this. For example, Amazon did this until they were profitable, and then everyone thought it was amazing. Another good example of this is Salesforce. It wasn't profitable, and then it started making money, and then will probably take over the world. So with revenue at 160 million, that's quite a bit of money to play around with. And if they were just a little bit tighter with their budget and perhaps maybe didn't have a lot of accoutrement that a lot of other startups have, then they might be able to be profitable. But does that ruin the narrative? And this is one thing that really grinds my gears about these Silicon Valley tech companies. Like, why do you gotta lose money like Amazon when you can be profitable like a regular business? And the answer is that they don't want to ruin the narrative. As soon as you earn a profit, the narrative is ruined. It says that you're not the next Amazon, you're just a regular old small business. Nevertheless, there's a lot of opportunity for Duolingo to expand here. They are charging $49 for an English test, and there's a lot of monetization options. In fact, there are so many monetization options through gamification on their app that the chance of profitability is going to be much higher in the future. Now, I always think they should just lower their expenses to just become profitable and use that money to double down on what works, but what do I know? Now, there are a few problems with Duolingo. First and foremost, when you actually go an IPO, you are accountable to a lot of shareholders. And what that means is that you have to act in such a way that increases shareholder profit. And that doesn't always make for a better user experience. And because of that, you're gonna see a lot more heavily monetized options. Everything is going to be an in-app purchase or something else so that they can actually make a lot more money. And you can definitely see with publicly traded companies, they are a lot more aggressive on the profitability because profits need to go up and up and up, and they need to get more and more and more users. And with everyone needing to learn a new language, that is not necessarily a bad thing. There's going to be a ton of users. They have 1.6 million subscribers so far, and why not make that 10 million or 100 million subscribers? Now, the biggest problem with Duolingo is its reliance on the App Store. Now, this can be also a good thing or a bad thing. Let's talk about why it's a good thing first, and then we'll talk about why it's a bad thing. Now, a lot of people might say that this is really a bad thing because you're reliant on Apple, but that actually isn't so bad. If you're in Apple's walled garden, things are pretty nice. You just don't have to go outside the walls. And believe it or not, apps like Duolingo are quite profitable once you adhere and basically make Apple happy. If you make the owner of the garden happy, then you will be happy too. And this is something that Duolingo clearly does. Duolingo has a very good app, and I believe it is coded within a native Xcode app because it is such a good app. And because it's so good, Apple obviously likes to promote it. And since they promote it, they have a large, very successful and rich user base. Duolingo clearly profits of that, all for the 30% that Apple takes. Now, of course, the Unreal versus Apple lawsuit might change things up a bit. Maybe that might be a good thing for Duolingo if Apple reduces the amount that they take from the App Store, which I'm not sure what's going to happen in that case, and that's probably a topic for a future video. But nevertheless, taking 30% to make $161 million is not necessarily a bad thing. You make Apple happy, they will make you happy too. And that's not a terrible business model, by the way. Just because Apple is taking this much money, if you do well inside the walled garden, then it's not necessarily bad. But at the same time though, you are subject to Apple's whim, and they can change policies on a dime, and that can negatively affect you. And this is why you see a lot of these companies go to the web, because the web isn't really owned by anybody. What happens is if there is an ed tech company startup and they say, oh, I want to just make something on Apple's iOS store, well, most VCs are probably going to say no, unless you have a VC that knows how to do that. So what that really means is that because Apple can change anything, there might be subject to less profits in the future, and it can be completely random. It could be a completely random thing that happens one day, and then all of a sudden the profitability tanks. Now, Apple's unlikely to do this, especially with an app like Duolingo, but at the same time, it could happen. Now, Android is no better, and if you looked at the profitability, they make most of their money off of App Store and not on Android, and this absolutely makes sense. And again, Google can change something the next day, and they could probably lose a lot of money. So going back to the tech startup, if I were to do an ed tech startup, and I were to go to VC, I'd probably start with the web and then maybe make a mobile app later. But what's better right now is to make an ed tech company that already taps into a large user base. Now, Duolingo is obviously a closed system, and that's probably a topic for another time on how to be successful in ed tech. So in conclusion, Duolingo has done very well, and they're one of the companies that I have said over and over again that I respect, and I wish them all the best luck, and I will probably be a customer of them in the future should I have to learn French, because believe it or not, my kids have to go to a part French immersion school, and somehow I might have to learn French because they're going to learn French, because otherwise my kids will be able to talk in French and I won't be able to understand them. So in that case, guess where I'm going? I'm going to Duolingo. And looking at their financials, it's not terrible. Just because they're losing money right now doesn't mean they'll never be profitable. I think they have a really good thing going for them, and I will probably invest some money in the future. However, I am probably going to look at sometime in the future when their stock cools off a bit. Not right now, it's a little bit too hot. The fact that it went up so much yesterday is a very good sign. It is a very good sign that not only the e-learning and edtech industry is going to be very bright in the next 10 years, but it's also a sign specifically for Duolingo to be a very big leader in this space. Alright, so that concludes this video. Thanks for watching. If you really like this channel, you can subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. After all, I do run an e-learning company. We release 20 to 60 hours of fresh new content per month, every single month. Our goal is to get to 10,000 paid subscribers, and if we could do that, we could probably release 200 to 300 hours of content per month, or maybe even more. It really does help us subscribe to Mammoth Interactive. We have monthly and yearly options. Not only does it make the content on this channel possible, it makes my e-learning company possible as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.